As we've said, Africa is open for business, and we're putting meat to the bones. So whatever questions you have, even if you don't get the opportunity to ask the speakers, put them down. We'll collect them and pass them over to the organizers, so you have an appropriate answer at the appropriate time. Money is the thing, and financing is critical. Financing Africa's growth and redefining UK partnerships is one of the things we need to focus on. Where do we stand when it comes to digital trade? Where do we stand where we want to blend capital and strategic diplomacy? Be part of the panel, we have Richard Moir, International Trade and Market Access Specialist. He's also an advisor on risk management.
Good morning, everyone. So welcome to this morning's session. We'll be talking about financing Africa's growth with a little, and on top of that, looking at that, having that focus on that UK partnerships and how we can redefine UK partnerships to drive growth. Excellent. So, welcome to our panelists. We're going to start off with a quick introduction.
Thank you. Richard Moir is my name, and it's great to hear what you just said, because I firmly believe in the Commonwealth trade advantage. And I'll start by saying this: the antidote to Trump tariffs is the Commonwealth trade advantage. And now, specifically speaking, I have Caribbean connections, and I'm very interested, and I'm sure some of you are also in the room interested in African-Caribbean trade, which has great potential, and I think, again, because of Trump tariffs, will become increasingly important. Now, my background is principally in private banking, due diligence, investment protection, and also this relatively new area, particularly in Africa, although it's increasingly popular, is to do with what's called sovereign equity. In other words, residency and citizenship by investment, the creation of new revenue streams. So if certain countries would like to attract new investors, you might wish to consider the notion of sovereign equity. And then specifically when it comes to the Caribbean and African connections, you may have seen that the Import-Export Bank has established new links with the Central Bank of the Eastern Caribbean to create a trade platform which will use cryptocurrencies, among other things, to facilitate Afro-Caribbean trade.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll touch on the Commonwealth advantage shortly. Lorna, if you can give a quick introduction.
I won't pretend to give you a history lesson. However, let's fast forward to now. And the potential for trade between the Caribbean and Africa is definitely increasing. One of the contemporary reasons for that is the American tariff attitude. And so a way of getting around that is to trade directly between Africa and the Caribbean, say through Barbados or Jamaica, for example, and that's happening. There are also increased flights. You've had delegations. I'm pleased to see that the High Commissioner for Grenada will be here later on, because I know for a fact, having done business between Grenada and Africa, there is increasing potential there. There was even last week a summit involving Caribbean leaders and African leaders to further enhance and develop more and more business. So it's happening. That's the point. And then I alluded to earlier about the access which already exists in Africa, the model for compensation to facilitate trade between African countries. Well, they're trying through the Afro-Exim Bank to apply that model to the central banks in the Eastern Caribbean and create an exchange compensation platform which will ultimately lead to the use of cryptocurrency rather than foreign exchange currencies, like using the dollar and having to rely on banks in New York and Miami to facilitate trade. So they're looking at ways of de-dollarization, which is obviously, depending where you sit, a plus and a minus, but it's definitely being trialed via the Central Bank of the Bahamas, for example. So, and then you've got individuals who, despite the macro level developments that I've tried to describe just now, there are also individuals who are increasingly aware of African trade potential. and that's also happening too. What we lack in the Caribbean is increased transport links, because at the moment one has to fly via London or via New York or some other place before you can actually directly access the African business potential. But the point I also wanted to make is this. It's nice to be idealistic and imagine there's possibilities for trade. Indeed there are. However, there's no substitute for doing your due diligence, looking at your client in a thorough way to really understand and know them. Is it really their money, and you're not aiding and abetting inadvertently money laundering and corrupt practices? Because sadly, no one's immune to that wherever you sit in the world. And sadly, even the UK has a record in this. If you look at the International Corruption Index, which I'd all encourage you to look at, you see very clearly the hierarchy of countries, and organized crime is international in every sense. So know your client, do your due diligence, and certainly know your business partner. So on that note, I'll hand over to...
The other advantage, of course, we know the Commonwealth advantage, is of course we all speak English. So it means you can read the fine print and hopefully be able to do your due diligence better on the deals. So let's open up the panel to questions from the floor. So we'll take a few questions from everyone. Feel free to ask. You can ask a general question to the whole panel, or you can ask it to a specific panelist. Let's get going.
Thank you so much for the insightful contributions. My name is Clementina Aino, and I'm CEO of 6 Cs, that bridges the gap between education and employment. You mentioned about education being a key element, so I just want to find out how we can support in terms of Africa, Uganda, and particularly the developing countries, regarding quality assurance, based on best practice found in the UK, but really identifies the contextual and the education landscape. So my background is education quality assurance. I was an offset inspector for over 25 years, so I'd love to know about that.
So we have one question on education, so should we put that to you, Richard? Do you want to take it? Or who's happy to take that?
Can we take one more?
Yeah?
I'm not educated enough, but I'll tell you what I do know. So I'm involved with not a British company, but a South African one, which has created programs using artificial intelligence and all manner of newfangled technology, which I'm not an expert in. But anyhow, what they're doing is providing for classrooms in places like Zimbabwe and elsewhere that are very badly equipped, to put it mildly. They're providing these ready-made lessons for young people of various ages, and it's a whole curriculum that they're rolling out using new technology. So that would be one area that I'd be prepared to advise and introduce you to the relevant people, because I think from what you just said, it sounds like it would be ideal. Of course, in the UK we have, our immigration regulations now make it difficult for foreign students to come here, so universities are increasingly being forced to go outside of the UK to provide teaching capability. So you've got, I know in Uganda there are certain UK universities which have good relationships, and long may they continue and certainly be encouraged, because as I say, with our immigration rules in this country, it's increasingly difficult, and foreign students obviously pay more than UK ones, so that's a decline in income as a result, and that makes universities suffer. So I think there may be something there, but I don't know more than that. Anyhow, let's hand over to Louis, because I know he's got something to say.
I want to take one more question here, and want to move on with time. Make it a short and quick, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Louis, and all the participants. My name is Ivan Engoru. I'm an advocate of the High Court of Uganda and a lecturer at Makerere University School of Law. You spoke about lack of rules as an impediment to transfer of capital, but I wanted to tap your brain with regards to also the problem of standardization, because we belong to the Commonwealth, but you'll agree with me that we are at different levels of economic development. How would you propose we deal with that if you're speaking, for example, to a legislator? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. If we can make the response short. Ladies and gentlemen, everybody's still around, so we can please catch up with them in the different rooms and have a conversation.
Thank you. I agree with what Louis just said, but I was just thinking back to what the central bank governor had to say about being optimistic, and I certainly am for the future. And I would also add to being optimistic, I would advocate and make a plea for mentoring. We've heard lots about chambers of commerce. Well, chambers are not just useful for best practice, they're also good for mentoring young people. And I would encourage everyone to think along those lines. We all have a certain age, we all have a certain knowledge, and I think knowledge sharing, best practice sharing, capacity building are exactly what I think will help make Africa both strong and resilient.